Let's begin in Afghanistan, where the government says the Taliban have killed 7 security personnel and wounded 1 in the northern Parwan province. A government spokesperson said 1 Taliban fighter was also killed in the ambush on a checkpoint in Ghurban Valley. Meanwhile, the Taliban have accused Kabul of violating the 3-day Eid ceasefire by killing 10 civilians in the southern Zabul province. Officials, however, say 18 Taliban fighters were killed in the air raid. Meanwhile, National Security Council spokesperson Javed Faisal says a technical delegation of the Taliban is in Kabul to work with the government. Faisal said the 2 delegations will deliberate on the release of prisoners of both sides. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has notified Congress that the Trump administration no longer considers Hong Kong autonomous from mainland China. This precedes the expected passing of fresh laws by Beijing today to tackle secession, subversion, and so-called terrorist activities in the city. He said Hong Kong no longer merits special treatment under U.S. law. Pompeo's statement was not accompanied by a revocation of any specific privileges for the city. Since 1992, the U.S. has had separate political, economic, and trade relations with Hong Kong. Those were in line with China's one country, two systems policy. Meanwhile, scuffles have broken out in Hong Kong's Legislative Council as lawmakers debated a bill criminalizing disrespect of China's national anthem. Russia says the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS Group summits will be postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The summits were scheduled to be held in St. Petersburg from July 21st through to the 23rd. The Kremlin press service said given coronavirus restrictions, the organizing committee has decided to take this step. It said new dates for the summits will be set depending on the epidemiological situation in member countries. BRICS is made up of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Meanwhile, the SCO countries include Pakistan, China, India, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. Russia has denied sending military personnel to Libya after Washington accused Moscow of sending fighter jets to aid Khalifa Haftar's forces. Lawmaker Vladimir Zhabarov said the Russian upper house of parliament has not received any request to approve such a dispatch. Earlier on Tuesday, the U.S. military said Russia deployed aircraft to Libya to support mercenaries belonging to the Wagner Group. The U.S. military's Africa Command said the aircraft arrived from an airbase in Russia after transiting through Syria. It also said the jets were repainted to camouflage their Russian origin. In Libya, recent advances by government forces have thrown a year-long offensive by Khalifa Haftar on Tripoli into jeopardy. With extensive Turkish backing, the UN-backed government has been able to push Haftar back from his foothold in southern Tripoli. Libya has been split since 2014 between rival factions based in the capital Tripoli and in the east. The GNA took a string of small towns linking Tripoli to the Tunisian border last month. Last week, it also took Watia, a strategic airbase near Tripoli, as well as 3 small towns to the southwest. In a statement, a government spokesperson said Haftar's forces have withdrawn to the city of Bani Walid.
Those following events witnessed LNA's withdrawal to the city of Bani Walid, 150 kilometers southeast of Tripoli, as well as the expulsion from its airporting groups. The first and second days of Eid al-Fitr witnessed the arrival of 18 airplanes at the airport, 2 of which are Ilyushin planes and 16 Antonov planes.
In the U.S., the death toll from COVID-19 has crossed 100,000, with 1.69 million infected. The virus has now killed more than 355,000 people worldwide and has infected over 5.6 million. This report has the details.
Hard-hit northeastern states in the U.S. have reported decrease in the new cases in recent days, and the pace of deaths nationwide has fallen. But cases have been rising in Arkansas, North Carolina, and Wisconsin. In South America, the situation is worsening as Brazil's death toll surpassed 25,000 people. Hospitals in Peru are struggling to cope with the pandemic.
Right now, we find ourselves in a collapsed reality. We don't have beds in the ICU. We don't have beds here in the VENEZUELA hospital. Patients are dying every day. There are no results from authorities. So we urgently asking for results for our personal protective equipment to arrive.
Meanwhile, European countries are closely monitoring any jump in new cases following the easing of lockdown. Britain will move towards more localized actions to tackle coronavirus as opposed to nationwide measures.
We're only in a position to be able to reopen primary schools and outdoor markets if they're COVID secure this coming Monday because we've flattened the curve and now we have this system in place. And in the coming weeks, we will gradually and very carefully move away from a lockdown that's national in scope, blanket in application, and start moving towards a system that's much more targeted in scope and focuses local action on tackling local flare-ups.
Asia, South Korea is witnessing a second wave, reporting the most cases since April 5th as infections rose for a third straight day. Infections and deaths continue to pile up in India, Bangladesh, Pakistan and Afghanistan, while the pandemic appears to be slowing down in Iran.
In Pakistan, 36 people have lost their lives to the coronavirus in the last 24 hours, taking the tally here to 1,260. The Health Ministry says 2,076 more cases were recorded, with the total number of infections crossing 61,000. The ministry said over 8,000 tests were conducted yesterday, as the total number crossed 508,000. It said 20,231 coronavirus patients have recovered. The ministry said the province of Sindh leads in the number of cases with over 24,000 infections. Punjab follows close behind with 22,037 cases. Meanwhile, 179 Pakistanis stranded in India due to the COVID-19 lockdown have returned via the Wagah border. Some had gone to India to visit relatives, some for medical treatment, and others to attend religious ceremonies. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan will attend a high-level event, Financing for Development in the Era of COVID-19 and Beyond, today. The virtual event is being hosted by the Prime Ministers of Canada and Jamaica and the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. The Foreign Office said the Prime Ministers of Japan, UK, Vice-Chancellor of Germany and the Saudi Crown Prince will also address the event. It said the Premier will share his vision on possible ways to address financial challenges of developing countries. It said debt vulnerability of developing countries will be one of the 6 interlinked financial issues discussed. Khan had called for a global initiative on debt relief to create fiscal space for developing countries in the context of the pandemic. Pakistan has called on the UN Security Council to hold India accountable for its war crimes in occupied Kashmir. The occupied valley is reeling under New Delhi's crushing curfew and communications blackout for the past 298 days. Pakistan's envoy to the UN, Munir Akram, warned that inaction by the 15-member body over foreign aggression in IOK comes at a high cost. Addressing a virtual UNSC meeting, Akram asked the Council to focus on the causes of emerging and long-standing conflicts. The envoy asked the Security Council to find political and inclusive solutions for the Kashmir and Palestine issues. He said India has callously exploited the coronavirus crisis to tighten its control over the occupied territory. Well, the U.S. has ended sanctions waivers for remaining JCPOA-related projects in Iran, effective in 60 days. The waivers allowed modification of Iran's heavy water reactor in Arak, which prevented it from using plutonium for military use. In a tweet, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said he was responding to Tehran's continued nuclear escalation. The secretary said further attempts at nuclear extortion will only bring greater pressure on Tehran. Pompeo also slapped more sanctions on 2 leaders of Iran's nuclear enrichment program, Majid Aghai and Amjad Sazgar. He said Iran's scientists need to make a choice, either pursue peaceful work outside of the proliferation realm or risk being sanctioned. Tehran says the 4th Iranian tanker of a 5-vessel fleet carrying gasoline to Venezuela has entered the Caribbean. The tanker, Faxon, is to be escorted by Venezuelan armed forces en route to its destination. The Iranian ambassador to Venezuela, Hujjatullah Sultani, said the tankers are a firm response to the U.S.'s unilateral policies. State media said the fleet is carrying up to 1.53 million barrels of gasoline to help oil-starved Venezuela. It said the third vessel, the Petunia, is approaching the El Palito refinery, where the first vessel, the Fortune, is docked since Monday. Meanwhile, the second vessel, Forest, has been discharging at the Cardin refinery since Tuesday. Media said the fifth and final Iranian vessel is on its way through the Atlantic Ocean. I'll be back after this break with plenty more news. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The Saudi-led coalition says its forces have downed drones launched by Houthis towards the Saudi border city of Najran. The coalition said this is the first such incident since late March. In a statement, the coalition spokesperson, Colonel Tolki al-Maliki, said the drones were directed at civilian targets. He said the alliance would continue to take deterrent measures to neutralize and destroy Houthi capabilities. Al-Maliki accused the rebels of violating the ceasefire and de-escalation initiative announced by the coalition on April 9th. There was no immediate comment from the Houthi group about the attack. Kenya's government says the death toll from floods has risen to 285. Heavy downpours have wreaked havoc across the country, marked with flash floods, landslides, and sinkholes. The devastation has left thousands displaced, livestock dead, and crops destroyed. A government official said the number of people affected has risen to more than 810,000. The official warned that the loss of crops across the country may lead to food insecurity. Various regions of Kenya are being pounded by heavy rains that have paralyzed transport on busy highways. Pakistan is observing Yom-e-Takbir today. The day marks the 22nd anniversary of the country's first successful nuclear tests. On May 28, 1998, Pakistan carried out 5 nuclear tests in the Chagi area of southwestern Balochistan. Pakistan had carried out the tests in response to India's test of nuclear weapons in the state of Rajasthan. Following the test, Pakistan became the 7th nuclear power globally and the first in the Muslim world. In the U.S., meanwhile, protesters have clashed with riot police firing tear gas for a second night in Minneapolis in an outpouring of rage over the death of an unarmed black man. 4 Minneapolis police officers were fired over the killing of George Floyd after the FBI launched a probe. Hundreds of protesters, many with their faces covered, thronged streets around the 3rd Precinct police station. They chanted "No justice, no peace," and looted a department store. The crowd grew to thousands as night fell and the protest turned into a standoff outside the station. Police used tear gas, plastic bullets, and concussion grenades to keep the crowds at bay. Protesters pelted police with rocks, water bottles, and other projectiles. Some even threw tear gas canisters back at the officers. Poor weather has forced SpaceX to call off the historic launch of 2 NASA astronauts to the International Space Station. The launch from the Kennedy Space Center would have been the first orbital mission from U.S. soil in 9 years. President Donald Trump, First Lady Melania Trump, Vice President Mike Pence, and his wife Karen had all flown in to watch the launch. But unfavorable atmospheric conditions prompted controllers to call a stop some 16 minutes before liftoff. The next opportunity for SpaceX and NASA will come on Saturday. If that is no good, there will be a third opportunity on Sunday. Nissan Motors has posted a net loss of $6.2 billion for the year that ended in March. In a statement, the automaker said the COVID-19 pandemic has devastated production, sales, and other business activities in all regions. The figures mark the company's worst losses in 20 years. Nissan said it had sufficient liquidity to steer through this challenging business environment. It unveiled a plan to turn the carmaker around by eliminating about 300 billion yen in annual fixed costs, cutting capacity and reducing the number of car models. The company has decided to close its factory in Barcelona, resulting in the loss of some 3,000 jobs. All major bourses in Europe have entered positive territory as investors react to the EU's massive recovery fund. The pan-European Stoxx 600 climbed nearly 1% in early trade, with travel and leisure stocks posting major gains. Germany's DAX edged up 0.5%, while France's CAC gained almost 1%. London's FTSE moved up 0.5%. The euro has also edged higher against the dollar. But crude prices slid on concerns about unrest in Hong Kong over Beijing's proposed national security laws. Time now to find out what the weather is like around the world. Well, for the latest updates on these and other stories, you can always follow us on our social media at Indus.news. Thanks for watching.